Hello, and welcome to Mystic Dog Mama, the podcast for soul led dog mamas, where you'll discover how to best nourish your dog and yourself, mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Dr. Alexia Meller. Welcome to another Fetch First Friday episode. I cannot believe it's already October. How did that happen? Well, as the days shorten and the leaves begin to fall, we step into a season of change. Autumn isn't just something happening outside our window. It's an energetic shift that moves through our bodies, our hearts, and yes, through our dogs too. This season carries the wisdom of letting go, of release, of finding beauty in impermanence. In traditional Chinese medicine, autumn is connected to the lungs and the large intestine, the organs of breath and boundaries, of grief and release. And when we tune into our dogs, we can often see those same themes reflected in their bodies and behaviors. Maybe a touch of dryness in the skin, or a little more sensitivity in digestion, or a deeper need for closeness and comfort. Today, my Learn F.E.T.C.H co-founder Stacy Renfrey and I explore how we can nourish our dogs and ourselves through this transition. We'll talk about foods and energetics that bring balance in autumn, and we'll also open space for a deeper reflection. What are our dogs inviting us to release, to breathe into, and to honor in this season of change? So pour yourself a cup of something warm, call your pup over to sit beside you, and let's step together into the gifts of autumn. On that note, let's go. Hello, and welcome to another Fetch First Friday.
How exciting. I love autumn. This is my favorite season. I'm so excited. I love
I
autumn. It's
I
great.
love it too. It's so good. It's so good, and it's definitely starting to get cooler, and the nights are getting longer.
Yeah, it's that meme that does sweater weather. Just makes me laugh. Sweater weather. I love it.
It totally is. And today we're going to talk about how to use this shift of seasons, the energetics of autumn, and how we can nourish our dogs and ourselves through seasonal shifts, how we can actually work with the season and allow the season to teach us about the things that we might want to consider adding into our diets, our dogs' diets, and also some of the things that might be coming up for us as a result of the seasons. And so there's an invitation for how do we create space to honor those things and process those things both for ourselves and our dogs. So yeah, lots of goodies today.
Yeah, and I always think about autumn as well, about that whole beginning to settle down for hibernation and the snuggling and the what does that mean for us to reflect on in terms of looking after ourselves and nourishing ourselves in a different way
Yep.
from because you're not on the go all the time like you might be in the summer. So this is the time to naturally start slowing down, she says.
Yeah, but we don't always take our own advice, do we?
No, but we're good at giving it, so we'll stick with that, right?
Exactly. Exactly. But yeah, so talking about autumn as it's what I really like too is it is its proper own season, but it's a liminal space as well. And as we go into for those of us that are into more of say like the natural spirituality too, we're entering into that season of the liminal space where the veil is thin, where there's an opportunity to check in with different things before we go into the kind of gestation of winter.
Yeah.
And so it is a very like fertile time. You're coming off of the back of the harvest, but it's a lovely time to sit with those sorts of things as well and kind of percolate what it is that you want to be, what kinds of seeds you want to be planting for the winter or the spring.
And what do you want to let go of? Like, with the trees,
100%.
letting go of everything and that whole shaking off stuff. Yeah, yeah. I
I
think it's spring and autumn are always my favorites, but autumn, I think as I've got older, autumn is really my favorite because there's
totally.
something so beautiful about walking on an autumn morning when there's crunchy leaves, the sky's blue, and it's got a crisp air. Oh, it's magic.
It
Absolute
is.
magic. I
And
love it. It's
that
just,
particular light.
yeah,
There's
that's,
just a
yeah.
particularity to the
Mhm.
light. It's beautiful. And the smell in the air, a little bit like Lorelai Gilmore, right? Like
Yeah,
I can
that
smell
when
it.
you can smell snow.
Apparently that is an actual phenomenon. Like there certain people can smell it before it happens, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Love
Uh,
it.
well, we don't get enough of it to for me to test that theory.
I don't know if that's a bad thing though, to be fair.
True.
But so we wanted to start off with talking about the kind of representations of autumn through an energetics perspective. And something I find really interesting the more and more that I dive into traditional Chinese medicine and the kind of correlations, they're just so spot on. And I don't know, for me in particular, I suffered really badly from the croup when I was a child, and it would hit around this time of year every single year. So if you're not familiar with the croup, it's a respiratory condition, and I would get it like clockwork coming into the autumn. And ironically or not so ironically, autumn is from a traditional Chinese medicine perspective associated with the lungs and the large intestine. So if we're thinking about how we want to support ourselves and support our dogs, it's considering how do we bolster
Mhm.
those organ systems. And that's also it's associated with the metal element in terms of a governing kind of element. And so what we'll be talking about today, from that perspective, is different things that you can be adding into your diet and your dog's diet that help bolster those two systems in particular, but how using the E of energetics and fetch can be such a useful tool for evaluating what kinds of foods are you going to be feeding, what kinds of veggies do you want to consider for you and your dog, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and where you can get curious because this is where you can go off down your own little rabbit holes because then it's about fitting those seasonal foods to your specific dog depending on their constitution and who they are. So yeah, it's a fun time, these shifts in
It
seasons. I love
It
it.
is.
Yeah.
It is. And I think another thing to kind of consider that touches on the energetics too is what happens as we move into like central heating and all of that kind of stuff where you need to consider dryness and dampness, not just warm and
Yeah.
cool like we talk about a lot. But we're going to need to add in some more moistening foods, for example, because we all get dried out this time
Yeah.
of year as well. So like, again, kind of banging on about how the gift of traditional Chinese medicine is always asking that question in terms of curiosity, like in relation to what? What other factors are going to shape the way that you need to think about it? And so looking at something like being indoors around heating is going to change stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And for dogs like our yeasty beasties that might be struggling with particular yeasty ears in the longer eared breeds, when the heating comes on, that I've been working with a few that it definitely kind of kicks up or ramps up a little bit because obviously if they've gone out for a walk, then they've come back, they might have had a rinse off or they've got wet or they've got it's rained. You towel them off, but it still takes them a while to actually get dry. They then snuggle up into a lovely little ball under a blanket somewhere, and it's just a perfect space for that kind of the yeast to kind of go, oh, I'm a happy camper now. And then so it's just thinking about those things and about our dog as an individual when these little shifts happen and what we can start to do to minimize the impact of that on them. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
exactly. And then from a kind of slightly other perspective around what the lungs and the large intestine represent, there's that emotional component.
Hmm.
There's grief, there's letting go. There's again, we see this with like Day of the Dead celebrations in Mexico and All Hallows Eve. There's that sense of impermanence that we're celebrating as well. There's an invitation to celebrate that and looking at boundaries for ourselves and for our dogs as well. So it's adding in that other perspective too as an invitation. And how do we create spaces for ourselves to explore that kind of safe containers? To look at those things too that do tend to come up this time of year.
Yeah, and I always think for me, journaling at this time of the year is always it seems to be a more natural thing to do because it's that time to hunker down with a nice hot chocolate under a blanket. And for me, I feel more inclined to do that type of thing then because it just feels right rather than in the summer when it's hot and you might be out doing things and enjoying the light evenings. Whereas when it's dark and it's that time of year, it's just yeah, it's that. All
It's
of those
good.
things, but it's invitations, right? To think about those things and how what little rituals you can bring in to honor the season changes as it goes through, and then what is that a reflection for you and your dog? I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a lovely thing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's a beautiful time for shadow work as we go
Mhm.
into those darker
Mm.
periods. I love it. I love it so
Yeah,
much.
so good.
But do you maybe want to start? Should we start with sort of seasonal eating for dogs because and for ourselves because we're big proponents of being conscious. And I know it can be quite confusing in today's day and age in first world countries in the West in particular, where we have access to things all year round. We've really been removed from this idea of eating with the seasons, but we know how good it is for our health, for the planet, etc. And again, that's something I really like about traditional Chinese medicine perspectives is working with what is in season. That you see that there's this natural relationship between the things that we might be going through in our bodies and then nature providing the appropriate foods to support that. And so, despite the fact that you can get avocados in the UK all year round, don't ask me why. Um, But I think it would be helpful to talk about some things that are actually seasonal and some things that you might be surprised that are actually seasonal, but we get them all year round, that are perhaps the things you might want to prioritize in terms of considering what you want to focus on adding into your dog's diet. Sound good?
Yeah, because I think it was even before we started recording, and the penny dropped for me about mushrooms. I suddenly went, oh, because I'd said that my phone was filled with pictures of mushrooms at the moment. Because when I'm in the forest, I'm just like, oh, another one. Wow, you're amazing. Look at you. So I've got photos. Then the penny dropped. I'm like, oh, but that's the real season. I hadn't thought about that. That penny hadn't dropped for me. So
Yeah.
I'm all about the mushroom. I love mushrooms anyway, but now I'm just like, right, it's going in everything.
Absolutely. Well, and to your point, so yes, mushrooms are a superfood for us and for our dogs. A word of caution on mushrooms, since they are available out in the wild,
Yes.
only if, especially if you are not a forager and you don't actually know your local mushrooms, please just buy stuff from the grocery store.
And just take photos of the pretty ones in the woods.
Exactly, exactly. And you can feed your dog safely any mushroom that you can get at the grocery store. That's totally
Ted loves
fine.
them.
Yeah, and you just want to cook them.
Yeah.
You want to cook them first. So you can do that in, if you do, like I put them in the crock pot with the rest of Lucky's food, but you can also just kind of do them up in a
Ted loves
pan.
his with scrambled egg.
There you go. There you
That's
go.
his favorite combination, a few
There you go.
mushrooms and some egg. Lovely. But generally he gets some of mine, so that's the way we share it.
Yeah. And mushrooms are a great source of vitamin D as
Yeah.
well. So,
Which we don't get enough of during the winter, so look at that. It's like Mother
exactly.
Nature knew.
Exactly. And another big thing that's out now, and I love seeing these, is all the different types of pumpkin and
Yeah.
squashes. And so we get a lot of questions about what should I do about pumpkin? Is pumpkin really good for my dog? And again, it's dependent on the particular dog, but pumpkins are a fantastic food for dogs, sort of generally speaking. One of the things that I love, and I would always, I tend to prefer, you can get, so let me back up. A note for those of us who come from the US or Canada and have experience of canned pumpkin
Yeah.
that would be used for pumpkin pies. Do not get the stuff that comes pre-flavored. You want to get the 100% just pure pumpkin. You don't want all the spices that are in the other one. So if you're going to buy a can of pumpkin, make sure that it's just 100% pure cooked pumpkin. Just to clarify for that, because we get a lot of questions about that. But pumpkin is a great source of, I treat it therapeutically. I use it therapeutically for Lucky in terms of it's fantastic as a source of both soluble and insoluble fiber, which means that it can help with both diarrhea and constipation. It's one of those unique foods. So having some in, I usually keep some in the freezer. I haven't done it, like that's something I'm going to do now that they're in season is get some and basically boil it up, mash it, and then I tend to put it in ice cube trays
Yeah.
so that I've got like serving size kind of thing, and I have that on hand in case there's any kind of tummy upsets.
Yeah.
But it's also really great for antioxidants like beta carotene and zeaxanthin and beta cryptoxanthin. It's a great source of vitamins A, E, and C. And the seeds, if you take the seeds, they are also fantastic for, they actually contain protein, they contain zinc, they contain magnesium, and they have the amino acid cucurbitacin, which is what paralyzes worms. So using it regularly as a prevention in your worming protocol, but also if your dog does have worms, you can use that to help treat worms as well. So
Yeah.
it's a
And it fills a gap in the, when we're thinking about making sure we're covering all the bases in terms of nutrition in a raw food or a fresh food diet. Pumpkin seeds are brilliant as part of that as well. So yeah, 100%. I mean, I'll always ground mine, and
yeah,
yeah, we're always on about ground ones and I generally soak mine with
yeah,
bone broth, so it's just easier to digest.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So that would be a food that I would say, especially this time of year, you can prioritize, except we have to remember too, it is starchy. So again, going back to our kind of yeasty dogs or dogs that struggle with starch, that might not be the best thing to add in, but adding a little bit into a healthy dog's food, absolutely.
Yeah, lovely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I was reading about what was I reading about?
Black sesame seeds.
Black sesame seeds, that they're brilliant for this time of year as well, because they're great at moistening the intestinal tract. So when we're talking about the large intestine and keeping the system moist within this dry season, so black sesame seeds, fantastic little addition. Yeah.
And there's something to continue through the winter as well because they are associated with the kidney system
Yeah.
and the water, which is the water element going into winter. So that's something that would be great to kind of carry through
Yeah.
into the
So
spring.
it is like Mother Nature knew what she was doing, right? Like it's so
100%.
clever.
100%. Exactly. We also have other types of squash that come out,
Mhm.
not just pumpkins, so you can try different types of squash with your dog. We do get fruits like pears and apples and that kind of a thing. I would always suggest giving just small amounts of fruits because they are high in sugar.
Yeah.
And again, our dogs don't have a biological need for carbohydrates, so we want to be cautious about adding that in, especially if you've got a yeasty dog.
Yeah, and I mean Ted's not a yeasty dog, but he doesn't struggle. He struggles if I put too much stuff like that in. It just loosens him up. He just can't manage that level because I think he's just so well adjusted to, and it's who he is that
Hmm.
it's probably because he's a bit hot. So you add a little bit more kind of speed to the system with the sugar, it probably speeds things up a little bit. That's
Probably.
my guess. Although I have got photographic evidence, haven't I now, of him sunbathing,
That's because he's
which I
channeling
think
Lucky. He's
I am
channeling.
fascinated by this as an older. I know this is going slightly off tangent, but it's not in some ways, because it's about because he's now classed as senior. Don't tell him that, but there has been this little sudden shift to a little bit more in the last couple of weeks since the temperatures have started to drop. Proper snuggling and laying in the sun out here when the sun comes through. Now I'm wondering if how that's going to change over the seasons now. And it does mean that because last winter I started playing around with giving him cooked food when it got cold. And my intention has always been from kind of October this year to move him onto cooked food because he was getting a gurgly tummy and digestion seemed to be a little bit funnier um on raw when we went into the like deep winter, but I'm going to move him over sooner. So my plan now is once the raw that I've got finishes, he's going on to cooked. But again, it's this older dog shift and change.
Mhm.
To me, it's fascinating because I'm actually living through it and kind of seeing these shifts and changes happen and how I can adapt and add things like these into the diet. I love it.
It's great.
No, it's fascinating.
But what's great is that you track these things. So you're able to see and compare like year on year, season on season, and to get a better understanding of what is going on. And that's why we bang on all the time about tracking because it's so important, but it's
Yeah.
so helpful for
Yeah.
understanding your dog.
Just gives you those little clues. And like now, because now I'm already thinking I need to find his coat now.
Right.
Because it was only like 5 degrees the other morning when I went out, and I was like, right, so he's got some hip issues, he's got a knee issue. We need to keep joints warm. He's still running around and being a wally, but I need to protect that as much as possible. So keeping him warm during that is going to be really, really important. And if he is sliding a little bit more along the warmer to the cooler side as part of his aging process, I'm going to have to be more aware of that anyway.
Right.
It's just, oh, it's
But
fascinating.
what's interesting then along those lines, because you and I talk about as well, like how do you start when you're noticing those kinds of shifts and how do you start to support it? So, yes, he's a warm dog, but these other indicators are saying, well, maybe we need to make some adjustments. And so something that is a seasonal food that we are used to getting all year round, that you might be interested in adding more into his diet in this particular stage, is garlic. Garlic is kind of harvested in the autumn. And so when you look at what garlic does for the gut microbiome, but
Yeah.
it's a warming food. So in the summer, staying away, a lot of warm dogs would do best staying away from like garlic and ginger and those kinds of things in the summer. But then perhaps there's the opportunity to add them back in coming into the cooler months to help keep them warm. And it's doing amazing things for the gut microbiome
Yeah.
and the immune system, all of that. So it's a little bit, it's almost like that and ginger are the ones, it's kind of like the doggy fire cider kind of
Yeah.
thing, in the kind of human herbal world.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so it would be interesting to hear from you as well as are tracking all these things. If you find he actually does better with some of the things that you've had to avoid traditionally for him to
Yeah,
kind
because
of warm him up.
he's got some venison in this last lot of raw that I've just done in the DIY prep. So venison being quite a hot meat, but it's balanced with either duck or rabbit, so it's just kind of making it a neutral one. But when I go on to cooked, I can then start playing around with turkey and but mixing it with pork maybe, and just seeing how that which ones he does well with and which ones he does or he might not do as well with. So it's going to be a fascinating experiment because this is my first winter with him going into with that mindset because it was only last winter that I noticed the change.
Hmm.
So this year I'm going in much more prepared
Hmm.
and knowing that we've got some joint issues going on and all of those other things. It's like, what other adjustments can I make for him this winter to try and make it as comfortable as possible? So I'll keep you posted, people.
Good. But that's something that listeners can take away too, is that you might want to start kind of prioritizing more warming proteins, even
Mhm.
for your warmer dogs. Because again, it's always about in relation to what? It's going to get colder. So their bodies are going to be kind of fighting to keep warm.
Yeah.
So giving them warming proteins, giving them even like warming spices and veg and all that kind of stuff, kind of prioritizing that, but also adding in things like warm. So there's techniques around, even if you are continuing to feed raw, make sure you're serving it warmed up. So either at room temperature by bringing it out 30 minutes before you are going to feed it, or warm it up with some bone broth. That's something that
Our
I do.
favorite.
Even,
Yeah.
yeah, I love doing that. And I do that even for Lucky with his, so he's on a cooked diet year round. And I'm interested to see how he's going to handle
Mm.
the
Well, yeah, because
British
this is going to
winter.
be a big adjustment for him, right,
Massive
this year. Yeah.
adjustment, massive adjustment. So I'm going to have to look at, even though because again, in relation to what? All summer he's been having warming proteins and he's been doing great with it. I mean, he's not ever panted. Like it's never been hot for him, right? So what am I going to do to really make sure that he's warmed up during the winter where he's never experienced temperatures this cold? So I'm going to have to play around with all these things too. But one of the things that I regularly do for him is warm up his bone broth and then pour that over his cooked food so that it's served at a warm temperature.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I do that for Ted anyway. So he's not because there is that thought, isn't there, about that the spleen kind of everything kind of just goes into shock because it's so cold. But again, in relation to what? Because I had a conversation with a friend that's got a husky, and they're like, but they love eating their food like that. And I'm like, but let's look at the dog. Let's look at the breed, what they were bred for, where they come from. So I'm not going to be so concerned about that. But a Chihuahua, for example, that they're
Yeah.
not built for that. That's not who they are. And even though Ted's a warm dog, I still don't feed that. I don't feed it straight out the fridge. It will have warm bone broth on it just to take the edge off of it, so it's not as bad. But now moving into the winter, once he's cooked, he's done, I will warm it up even in the pan with some broth before I put it down
Hmm.
because I that made the difference last winter.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
again, just playing around with those ideas and just trialing it to see what works. But
Yeah,
this year I'll be looking. I wasn't so concerned about adding the veggies into some of the herbs, but I'll try more with those this year.
right. And
I
to
just
see.
get to play. It's great. I love
Exactly.
it.
Exactly. And something, I mean, listeners will know like my perspective on feeding Lucky as well is I like to look at how much can I combine my way of eating with his way of eating. So I make a bone broth for both of us to share. So that means I'm not putting onions in, I'm not putting bay leaves in, I'm not putting salt in. I add some of those things for myself afterwards, but I make sure I keep it separate from the batch so that he can have it. And look at, but I need to be drinking more bone broth as we go into this. I mean, this is the whole chicken soup thing, right? Like
Yeah.
your grandmother making that to help fight off colds and all that kind of stuff. So that's another way to think about doing it for you and your family to make sure that you're cared for as well. And it's also we go on all the time about like that just sheer joy of nourishing your dog and yourself and that sharing, making it into a ritual. That's another really easy way to do that.
Yeah, because who doesn't love a warm stew during the winter? Like, and but you can make a doggy safe stew that you could both share. It's like, it's so easy to do with broth and with some meat and some veggies and stuff. And like you say, if you want to add a little bit more flavoring to it, then you can do that afterwards. But the actual base thing is
Hmm.
exactly the same. And
Hmm.
they will love it because they're not begging from your plate because they've had their own version. So it's all good, right?
Exactly. Exactly. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And then that does tie into as well that sense of nourishing ourselves as well as our dogs. And I'm going to point listeners to an episode that came out when this airs. It will be the week before. It's coming out on the 27th, where I spoke with Jen Blau, who is a licensed therapist who focuses on compassion fatigue and looking at how many of us, especially those of us that love our animals so much or love animals generally or are naturally carers, how we can tend to like give to the point of burnout. And actually, compassion fatigue being this invitation to really look at how do we nourish ourselves? How do we care for ourselves so that we can continue to be those caregivers as well? So this season and finding those small moments of ritual, it doesn't have to be some big thing, right? It can be those small things where you are putting that intention of nourishing yourself as much as you're nourishing your dog, I think are so important. This is the perfect season for inviting that.
Yeah. And to experiment with cooking with those things because the
Yeah.
slow cookers come out, right? And the big pans come out because that's this. So if you have been a little bit hesitant about what it might be like to cook for your dog, then this is the time because this is when you can get to experiment for both of you. And you know that you're going to be giving your immune system some support during these winter months when, the colds and all the bugs come out. And this is when you get to bolster your immune system and you get to bolster there at the same time. But you get to share it. I mean, it's so cool, right?
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. And you and I had an offline conversation as well about what it means to kind of bolster the immune system now in preparation for flea and tick season next spring. So we're kind of going into that point where, fleas and ticks are not necessarily as much of a problem in most places because they're not around. But this is the opportunity, and especially off the back of me having had issues with Lucky picking up fleas because of the very stressful past few months, I would argue like the past year that he's had through all of this. I'm going to really focus on building his immune system over the winter so that come spring,
Yeah.
it's not an issue for him picking up fleas and ticks to the same degree that he has this year. So I am adding in things like thyme, like garlic, like ginger that are not only great for the immune system, but then they're also the things that we recommend putting into for when it comes to preparing for flea and tick season to ward off fleas and ticks because they basically make the dog stinky to those
Yeah.
things. So I'm keeping that up all year round right now instead of just focusing on as spring comes along, but actually
Yeah.
use this as the time to really bolster him.
Yeah, and support that. That continual thinking about the immune system, but seasonally, is just such a lovely way to think about it. And that what you're doing now is setting the precedent for hopefully and setting those foundations for next spring during the winter. But it's just always at the kind of forefront of your mind of like everything I do now is going to have a benefit. There's a payoff somewhere along that line, but we do it now.
Hmm.
It's good fun.
It is, and it's also taking into account as well with the immune system, thinking about things like stress and that kind of impact as well. So where can we take time out? And to me, like you said, getting cozy with our dogs and having a nice cuddle or doing some massage or inviting if it feels right for you and your dog would enjoy this, inviting in a professional to do a massage, for example, and help support them with that. This is the time to do all of that because that also helps support the immune system. It's a way to bond with your dog as well. So it's taking that into account. It's not just about what's going into the bowl. That's one very important part of it. But there are other things that you can be doing to be supporting them. Going and doing snuffling in leaves, that kind
Ted's
of stuff.
favorite thing in the whole world, literally. He would
Yeah.
do that. And I'd far rather him do that on a walk for like 20, 25 minutes than race around somewhere. Like, and because now as well, I'm having to be mindful about his joints. I'm having to change our walks so that our walks are shorter in length, but he's getting more time sniffing. So I'm having to adjust that now. And but sniffing for treats is literally his favorite thing in the world anyway. So
Hmm.
it's a win-win for me. But I love the sound of when he snuffles. It makes me so happy because he's busy, and that helicopter sound that they make when they do that. I love it. Just makes me laugh. Just such a great noise. I'm just like, carry on. I know, but then I know he's really sniffing.
Yeah.
That whole cycle within their nose is happening where they're taking in the new air and the old air's coming. Like, it's
Yeah,
fascinating.
exactly. It is.
Fascinating.
It is. And if you can't do it outdoors for whatever reason, that's not a possibility. There are indoor places that are set up specifically, or do it in your house.
Yeah.
Like getting, everyone knows my favorite thing with Lucky is like
Toilet roll.
socks and loo rolls. Exactly. Like the toilet roll or the paper towel, the kitchen
But
roll.
it's the way he holds the little bit just on his lip. That's the best thing ever.
I
Once
was
he's had the treats that were inside it and there's just a tiny bit.
It is ridiculous. But there are those kinds of ways that you can set up enrichment activities, and those are great to have in your mind as we're going into the cooler weather where
Yeah,
you might not be able to get out. So I'm starting the thing of like stocking up, keeping the loo rolls and the kitchen rolls and all that. So I've got a stock
ready. Yeah,
ready,
because I
ready to
mean,
go.
because for him it will be a big adjustment.
Yeah,
So there will be days when he's just like, I'm weeing, that's it. There's nothing else that's going on. That's a no. That's a hard pass. So, but having that stuff ready will then make sure that he's getting that kind of grounding to be
exactly.
able to do those things. Yeah. And I think that's something for me that I'm going to have to be mindful of because is Ted going to be able, do I want Ted with that with his joint stuff going out in potentially -2, no, probably not. Not now. And it's again that shift of having an older dog through the seasons, through the colder months, when you start having things like joint issues happening, what adaptations and changes am I going to have to make through the seasons to accommodate
Hmm.
the dog that I now have in front of me versus what I had even 2, 3 years ago? Very different now.
Hmm.
So all of that is starting to play in my mind as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and I wonder too, as you're sort of reflecting on that, and listeners will be reflecting on similar things too, as we notice different changes in our dogs and what that brings up for us. Like, even thinking about those being prompts for you in terms of your reflection and your journal work. And
Hmm.
it doesn't have to be that you're sitting there journaling, like in making it look like you're in a Starbucks kind of thing, with your nice. Although I love doing that, right? But
Yeah.
maybe that doesn't feel right for you. But maybe it's just sort of posing that question to yourself and then seeing what starts to come back to you. I think that's a beautiful practice too. But there's this idea, we talk about it in kind of Reiki circles, that there is an answer for every question. And it comes to you through your sort of 3D lived experience. So, like asking, what am I ready to release? And then see what, it doesn't have to be a logical or a cognitive
Yeah.
process. It can just be somebody mentions something to you, or you pass something on your walk and it makes you think about something, and it's that opening, that being open, and
Yeah.
also creating, because this season is associated with grief and we are heading towards the holidays, which are difficult for a lot of us
Yeah.
as well. How do you create the safe spaces for yourself to be able, those containers? What do you need to support yourself going through that? What is your team? We talk about building our dog's team all the time, but what is your team? What does that look like? And that might be making some plans with friends, telling them that this is a bit of a difficult time and that you might need to call on them. It might be creating a routine for yourself of the things that you enjoy doing, like almost like dating yourself, like
Yeah.
what are the things that fill me with joy? Having lovely, nice food for yourself in the cupboard. Whatever feels like a treat
Yeah.
for you, whatever feels supportive. But like I was saying, with kind of prepping for needing more loo rolls going into the winter, like have them on hand so that they are there for you as a support. And we always have our Facebook group as well, Fetch
Yeah.
First Light, as a container as well for those of us who are like-hearted in this way. And we want a space not just to know about what to feed our dogs, but also life with our dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking about when you were saying about like journal prompts not necessarily having to be an actual prompt where you then go and write something. But I had that experience on the walk the other day with Ted because I suddenly thought hit a part. I'd taken him on a slightly longer walk than I have done recently. And like he'd got to a point where he would normally go right and then go off and explore another stream. And then we'd add on at least another 30, 40 minutes to the walk. And I said, no, sweetheart, we're gonna go back. And he was fine with that. But that for me was a real kind of reflection point. I was like, this is changing now. This is, and I'm, but, and part of me felt really emotional about it. Like
Mm.
this is different. But the other part of me was like, what an honor this is to have this being with me. Like he's 10 now and he's in relatively good, even with the bits that's going on, he's in good health. And I'm like, what an honor that is to have him with me. And even though he wanted to carry on going, because he would have done, I was like, I'm putting those boundaries in. So it was a bit about that shift as well for me thinking, no, I need to look after you. This is my, I'm stepping up for you. I'm advocating for you. We need to be gentle with your joints as we come into these colder months. And it really struck me. So that was almost like a journaling moment, but I didn't have to go and write about it. It was just kind of in that moment that I was thinking about it. Like this is such an honor to have an older dog coming into the winter and what adaptations I can make and how I can change that. It was just a real reflection for me. So when you said that, that kind of triggered it in my head. But
Oh,
yeah,
I
it's
love that. I
yeah,
love that. Yeah, and I think most of us are afraid of change. That's kind of how we're wired as humans, but change is the only constant. And so how do we come into different relationship with it?
yeah. And it's change that shift of that change in our relationship from this, even though he will still just dart off at the beginning of a walk, like, whoa, we're out, we're got, but even the shift coming back and like getting in the car now, he can't jump in the car now after a walk. So I'm like, wait, I'll help. And then I help him up. It's all those subtle little things that are just showing that his body is changing and I'm having to, and it is bittersweet because you're just like, even a year, 18 months ago, he could have done that, whereas now he can't. But I'm just like, yeah, but he's 10, man, and he's still doing really well. So that for me is beautiful. So
Hmm.
I'm using that as a kind of lovely reflection rather than it being sad. But
Yeah.
obviously there is a little bit, but
Yeah, of
it's just a
course.
shift. It's a change, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a shift. I love
Yeah.
that though. So if anyone listening, if you've got some special prompts that you are using to reflect on, or if there's certain things that are coming up for you, we'd love for you to share it in the comments
Mhm.
or send us a little note. You can send us a note on Instagram at learn.fetch. You can also reach out to us at hello@learnfetch.com and let us know what's working for you. And also, as we kind of put out there all the time as well, if there are any particular topics that you want us to cover on upcoming episodes, please let us know. We want to make sure that we are supporting you in the best way that we can. And part of that support too is if you're not already a member, come and join us in Fetch First Light. I'll leave the links to all of this stuff in the show notes as well. But if you just search Fetch First Light on Facebook, you will find us. But we're having some conversations and starting some conversations with group members too about what does everybody really need right now and how can we build a really
Yeah.
robust support group that is not the average noisy Facebook group
Yeah.
and not all about confusing you with when you ask the question, what do I give my dog for this? And feeling like, oh my God, these million different answers. How do I navigate this? It's actually about helping you become your dog's advocate by teaching you how to use the Fetch framework to answer those questions for yourself, for your particular dog. Because again, every dog is an individual. So all the stuff we've shared today, even about pumpkin or what have you, that may be great for your dog and it may not be great for your dog. And
Yeah.
so it's helping you to navigate those particular beautiful things about the individuality of these beings that we live with.
Yeah, and not these silver bullets and these quick answers. Once you start to understand and know your dog in that way, those decisions become so much easier and so much quicker and intuitive because you're just like, nope, that won't work, or nope, I don't think that's for them. So, and it just happens like a reflex. And I think that's the beauty of using something like the Fetch framework, because it just gives you that tool that, and it becomes quicker and quicker each time, because you can just run it. You can look at something and be like, yeah, no, that, yeah. And you can decide, without that overwhelm and, that 2 a.m. doom scrolling that can happen, because we've all been
Yeah.
there. We've all
Yeah.
been there.
And you can feel confident for when somebody says to you, yeah, but this is really great for you. And you're not second guessing yourself.
Yeah,
And I think
100%.
I think that that is in terms of what we've been talking about too, of reducing stress and all that. That's been a massive stress relief for us individually when we apply this to our dogs, but also with all the clients that we've worked with too.
Yeah,
Super helpful.
100%.
So come and join us if you're not in there already.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we want to cover for autumn,
No,
for
I think
October?
that's no, I think that's an October autumn roundup, really, isn't it?
I think that's good. So let us know what your biggest takeaways are from this. And if you've got any thoughts, what do you do as you shift seasonally as well? Let us know. We'd love to hear
We're curious all the time.
all the time. Well, on that note, we will love you and leave you. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you again in November.
Yeah, have a lovely October, everyone. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Happy Samhain.
Yeah, that one.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining Stacey Renfrey and me for this Fetch First Friday episode. We hope you found it inspiring and helpful. Let us know what shifts you might be making for you and your pup as you step into the season. You can connect with us on Instagram at learn.fetch. And remember, we'd love for you to come join us in our free Fetch First Light group on Facebook, our sanctuary where soulful dog mamas like you can find clarity, confidence, and connection. I've left this link in the show notes as well. All right, until next time.